I currently have 1,000 shares of Apple stock that I purchased around 5 years ago. Now these 1,000 shares of Apple are currently valued at around $180,000. Now I am planning on selling every single share of Apple at some point in the next few months, and planning on taking all the proceeds to buy into the SCHD ETF. Now in this video I'm going to share my exact reasoning for this massive trade and show you the exact strategy and math on how this will lead me to have a massive amount of SCHD by the time I retire. Now stay tuned because we're going to go through all this and more. Right after you, please drop a like in this video and subscribe for more future content like this. Now I do think it's only fair to actually go into my portfolio and show you that I do in fact actually have 1,000 shares of Apple stock, which once again is worth around $179,000 and some change, or right around 180K. Now, like I said before, I bought these shares of Apple right around 5 years ago. I did not buy all 1,000 shares of Apple at one given time, but over maybe a year or two's time frame, I did invest quite a bit of money that I earned from selling a business and bought a ton of Apple stock, which in hindsight was a great idea because the position is up around $61,000 as I'm filming this video. Now there's multiple different reasons on why I'm planning on selling all my Apple shares and going all in on the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. One of the main reasons being that moving forward in my investing strategy, I am a way bigger fan of buying into ETFs because of obvious factors like much more diversification and honestly just less maintenance overall. Because let's be real here, it feels great right now holding on to 1,000 shares of Apple stock. Because Apple's up in the green quite a bit, Apple's up 43.49% year to date over the last 5 years, and even around a year ago, Apple was trading at $125 per share. And for my portfolio size, having that much exposure to a single name, even if it is the biggest and one of the best companies in the world, which I definitely agree with, it's not necessarily something that matches my risk profile or my long-term investing strategy anymore. Another reason that I'm planning on going all in on the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF with all the proceeds from the Apple sale is because one of my primary goals for my overall dividend growth portfolio right now is to raise the overall yield of the portfolio and hopefully maybe in the next few years here actually start using some of the dividends that are paid to me throughout this portfolio and use the money for things like bills or maybe even future business ventures. You see, right now I'm taking all the dividends that are paid to me on a consistent basis every month or every quarter and reinvesting the money into more shares of more ETFs or of course single stocks. But at some point here, I am going to want to start to use some of the money, like I said, to cover bills or maybe even other projects ahead. And with SCHD having a starting dividend yield of around 3.5%, that's also growing very, very fast. That's going to give my portfolio a big bump in dividend income on an annual basis that will definitely help again with my strategy moving forward. So now that you know some of the reasoning on why I'm planning on selling my Apple shares and buying into SCHD, let's go ahead and dig real deep into SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, and learn everything this ETF has to offer. SCHD, also known as the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, is a popular exchange-traded fund that aims to provide investors with an exposure to high-quality US dividend-paying stocks. The fund is managed by Charles Schwab Investment Management and seeks to track the performance of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. The Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index is comprised of around 100 companies that have a history of consistently paying dividends, a track record of strong financial performance, and a history of raising dividends over time. Now, the ETF has gained some serious popularity over the past years, and this is largely due to things like the dividend focus. The fund focuses on dividend-paying stocks, which can be appealing to investors that are seeking income-generating assets. Also, the fund is very cost effective. The management fee is low, the fund is well diversified, and the dividend growth is insane, but we're going to go through all that and more in a second here. Now, SCHD is currently trading at $74.57. And even though that is towards the higher end of the 52-week range, being $65.96 as of the low and $79.49 as of the high, for a long-term investor like myself personally, I've still been buying shares of SCHD pretty much every single day, if not every other day in the market over the past few months. And this is because I believe in SCHD's overall methodology and the strategy of the ETF. And if history were to repeat itself, SCHD should be hitting some new all-time highs as far as ETF share price in the up-and-coming months, if not in the up-and-coming years. Now, one of the main reasons I would choose to hold onto this ETF is because of the fund strategy, how it chooses its holdings. And of course, with my personal risk tolerance, the diversification would definitely help me sleep well at night. The breakdown is as follows. Industrials 17%, healthcare 15%, financials 14%, technology 13%, consumer defensive 13%, consumer cyclical 9%, energy 8%, communication 4%, basic material 1%, and utilities under 1%. Now, SCHD has a very strong list of top 10 holdings if you were to ask me. We have companies like Broadcom, Pepsi, Cisco, Merck, the Home Depot, Texas Instrument, Coca-Cola, Chevron, Verizon, and Pfizer. Again, the basic strategy of SCHD is to pick companies with a strong financial background and companies that pay and grow dividends over time. Now, speaking of SCHD's dividend, the current dividend yield is around 3.49%. And keep in mind, SCHD is going to be paying another dividend pretty soon here, so the future trailing 12-month payout percentage is going to depend on what the next few dividends, of course, are. But regardless, SCHD's trailing 12-month dividend growth rate, which is how much the dividend has grown over the last 12 months, is at 7.13%, which is on the lower end of what we've seen as far as SCHD's dividend growth over time. Considering over the last 3 years, it's 12.33%, 5 years, it's 13.92%, and 10-year 11.32%. But really, regardless of whatever time frame you look at when it comes to SCHD's dividends and how much they've paid over time, the dividends have been getting bigger and bigger consistently over the last 10 or so years. Now, the fact that SCHD does pay a strong dividend and has for several years now is very important to my individual investing strategy. My specific investing strategy is to acquire more and more high quality assets, which can of course be individual stocks and or ETFs that not only pay a dividend on a monthly or quarterly basis, but also has a strong history of doing so. And of course, lastly, a history of raising their dividends over time. Because years from now, if you're getting paid more and more consistently from the assets that you purchased years ago, that's only going to make your wealth snowball larger and larger, quicker and quicker. And again, for me personally, this is just my strategy. I really favor cash flow. I dream of building a portfolio where all the dividends from all the different stocks and ETFs to be able to cover my bills and really cover whatever expenses I want to have in the future. So an ETF like SCHD definitely has the ability to do so. So now that we went over pretty much everything there is to know about the SCHD ETF, you can definitely see some of the value that the ETF has to offer. But now let's go through the dividend calculator and type in all the information as far as what things are going to look like in the future. If and when I invest $180,000, of course, more or less, depending on where Apple stock is trading in the future, and invest every single dollar of that into the SCHD ETF, and of course, reinvest in the dividends, let's see how much SCHD we have by the time it's time for me to retire. So for the inputs, we have quarterly distribution frequency, which SCHD does have a quarterly paid dividend, of course. We have a drip turned on, which in theory, this is just if we were to reinvest every single dollar paid out in dividends from SCHD back into more shares of it. We have $180,000 of starting principal, which in theory will be the amount from the sale of Apple shares, $0 of annual contribution from there. Even though most likely I'll always buy more shares of SCHD from other portfolios, etc. For this example, let's keep that at 0. We have a 3.49% starting dividend, which that's the trailing 12 month. We have 10% annual dividend amount increase. Now, according to SimplySafe dividends for SCHD, we have last year 14%. This is 2021 to 2022. The last 5 years were on 14%, last 10 years 12%. So just to be conservative, we could probably go anywhere from 6, 7 up to 12%. But just for the video's sake, let's go with 10%. Now for expected annual share price appreciation, if you look at Seeking Alpha on the 5-year time frame, SCHD has appreciated around 9% or so in the last 5 years. And again, these numbers can change, of course, much bigger or smaller, but let's go with 10%. The years invested, let's go with 30, which who knows if I actually would let this run this long, but again, just for the video's sake, let's see what we get. So here we have it. This is exactly how things would look if and when I sell off my shares of Apple and go all in on SCHD. The $180,000 worth of SCHD will give us around $6,300 per year in dividends off of that starting yield of 3.49%. Now year number 2, with a slight dividend increase and of course dripping the dividends back into more shares of SCHD, we would earn around $7,100 in dividends for that year. By year number 5, we're up to $10,000 in dividends. By year number 10, we're up to $19,000 in dividends per year. Year number 15, we're almost at $1 million of principal at this point, with already $35,000 per year in dividends. Now by year number 18, $50,000 per year in dividends and almost $1.5 million in principal. Year number 20, $1.8 million in principal and $65,000 in dividends. Now from year number 20 to 30, this is where you really see the power of compounding kick in because the numbers start to get much bigger and then reinvested, which makes the amount on both sides much bigger, much faster. By year number 25, we're at 3.3 million of principal in theory and 120,000 a year in dividends. By year number 26, 3.8 million and 135 per year in dividends. 27, 4.3 million in principal and 153,000 a year in dividends. Year number 28, 4.9 million and 172,000 per year in dividends. 29, we're at 5.5 million, almost 200,000 in dividends. If we were to let this snowball continue to compound for 30 years in principal and 220,000 in dividends. So there we have it, guys. In theory, if I were to sell off my shares of Apple, which I currently have, and go all into SCHD, after the 30 years, after all the dividends are paid, and as far as all the price appreciation, as far as SCHD's share price, in theory, we could be left with around $7 million in 30 years, which is insane considering 180,000 was all that was added. Now, of course, like I said, I plan on contributing even more into SCHD because I am such a fan of this ETF. I love the methodology. I love the ETF's track record. And I love the diversification. And overall, this ETF just matches pretty much everything I'm looking for in a long-term investment vehicle. But I want to hear from you guys down below. Do you personally think that I should sell my 1,000 shares of Apple and invest all of it into SCHD? Let me know down below why or why not. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like down below and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.